Good morning, everyone. My name is Donanonymous, aka 1989 was born, aka Stealth Mongoose, aka Donald Miguel Thomas, and I'm here to say hello this very fine morning. As you can see, it's actually a very nice morning outside, a little gray, but it's all good. Well, this morning I am here to talk to you guys about a particular subject regarding a sub-subject on my last video. The subject was harm by religion and the influence religion can have on the general populace, as well as atheism and relevance to religion. Now, let me first start off by saying that this isn't going to be as long of a video as before. The intro is a little long already, but the subject is a pretty short one that's simple enough to understand for people who are willing to look at the reasons behind the way that causes create effects, I guess you could say. Without being too vague, let me jump into it. Today's topic is false attribution and the harm that can come from this mentality within religious structures. Let me clarify that with an example. Let's say you have... Let's travel back in time to the United States Civil War, and let's say you're a person who is... well, it doesn't even have to be you. Let's just say you're a person who goes back and who is in the Civil War and is hired to bomb a strategic enemy building. Let's say you're successful in your mission, skip all the intrigue scenario. You're successful in bombing this building, but when it comes to giving credit to you, a few suggestions come up. Amongst your squad mates, one of them just outright says that you should be accredited for bombing that building because, you know, as a proud member of the Confederacy or whatever, you managed to cause some destruction and you should be lauded for it. Well, another person within your platoon comes up and says, you shouldn't be thanked for that, because it was a miracle that you even managed to plant the bomb in time and get out of there before alarms went off and you got shot down. So this person says that you guys should be thanking God. You know, they should thank God that the bomb blew up just when it did, or thank God that you managed to plant the bomb just in time, that kind of thing. Now there's a third person, just for shits and giggles, it's a third member of your platoon who states that that you shouldn't be thanked for it, neither should God, but that your organization should be thanked for it. The Confederacy should be thanked for planting the bomb and everything. You shouldn't be thanked as a specific person, and neither should God. This protects your identity, but ensures that the Confederacy still receives glory for this act. In either way, you decide one of these courses of action, and depending on this course of accrediting or attribution that you decide, a number of things could happen. Let's say it's a century down the road from this event. Historians have gone over the Civil War and cataloged it time and time again. And they've gone with one of the three suggestions you've chosen, and here's where I come to my point. If you had chosen to attribute yourself with the act of bombing said building, your name would be in the history books. For better or worse, people would be able to look up who you were, what your family's surname was, what your lineage is, and discover how, when, where, and why you planted that bomb to blow up that Republic building. See, not such a bad idea, is it? You see, this way we managed to catalog information and we managed to discover more about history, whether or not to the benefit of the person who committed the act. We discover more about the world if we attribute things to the people who do them. Now, okay, you might be thinking, well, shit, that's not fair. You didn't even go over the God example. Well, shit, let's try that, shall we? Let's say that although you managed to plant that bomb, and although the Confederacy were the people that aided you, let's say that instead of thanking yourself or the Confederacy, a lot of you decide that God should be attributed with this success. The majority of the Confederacy platoon that you're a part of decide that you should thank God for planting that bomb. Well, let's go over the history scenario now, shall we? How is that going to influence history if the only thing that people remember thanking for that event was God? Well, let's throw that example out there. I'm a historian, and I'm researching that event again, except this time I find that the event was attributed to God. Well, what am I going to do now? Now, I may still come across evidence that you committed the act, that you bombed that building, but the idea that you and your group have decided to attribute God to this act suddenly slows down my information gathering process. Because instead of having a historical name with records indicating who actually performed the act, I now have at least one or two people who are convinced that God was involved. Now, is this a bad thing on its own? Probably not. You see, if you thank God for some things that are unimportant and, whimsy, like, oh, thank God that I had the inspiration to do what I needed to do today, that's fine. But if you attribute an actual act, an actual event, an actual facet of the universe to your imaginary friend, you're going to get heavy inconsistencies such as in the bomb scenario. People in the future will be asking the question, well, how did this guy do that? And the only answer that is provided when you say, thank God, is God. Now that answer is of course wrong. Anyone who wants to try to bomb a building isn't going to ask God to do it. They're going to go out there and bomb a building. Whether or not they believe in a religion is either innocuous or irrelevant. The fact of the matter is that people act in a manner according to their beliefs, whether or not, maybe not their beliefs, but they act in a certain manner whether or not they attribute something to their beliefs or otherwise. Which is why beliefs should be left out of the equation. You should never allow a belief, a symbol, or a creed to take the place of a reason within your actions. Let's give, the neutral example. What if, in that scenario where you were bombing this Republic building, your group and your platoon and yourself had decided that the Confederacy should have credit for this act, that you should just attribute the entirety of the act, the bombing of the building, the escape, the avoidance of alarms, the celebration afterwards, everything should be attributed to the Confederacy itself and no names should be mentioned. Well, as a historian, I would find enough information to show that the Confederacy was involved, and I would potentially take a little more time, but I would possibly manage to find the people who were involved in that area, within that platoon, in the Confederacy. This is a neutral answer because it's not the same as attributing a deity who is neither involved in any way, shape, or form, or otherwise with the act, to attributing it to the person's organization. This is a step up from the deity argument, a step down from the personal responsibility attribution, but it works. it works better than the God argument, because if we're trying to track down people who have committed actions, then naming the Confederacy would be far easier to deduce the actual reasons than naming God. Naming the Confederacy would still be generally wrong, because we're choosing to attribute the act of an entire event to a group, organization, or symbol rather than the acts or actors themselves. Now, this all served one very important point, to show you guys how applicable the attribution of events to their actors is, as opposed to attributing an event to a deity, imaginary friend, or symbol. You see, that's why I encourage people in the streets, for example, to get the name of their officer's badge number. The officer's name and badge number. Don't just go out there and say, oh, the cops did it, or it was some pig, because that's what they rely on. They rely on this impersonal divorce of identity from action, much like government. And in reality, we're all responsible for our own actions, so shouldn't we record history as though that's the way it happened? Sure, we can say, for example, that this person who bombed the Republic building is a Confederate, and also he believes in God, but we won't say that the Confederacy or God actually bombed that building, because it was that man, that one person who decided to take these ideas upon his shoulders and act on them. Once we're able to do that, I think that religion will have a more relevant place in society. Because as of right now, religion acts as the ultimate straw man. Religion is the perfect blame and attribution figure for most things, especially the figureheads of religions like deities. If you look at all of the mysteries that are revolved around the Christian God, for example, and then you looked at the scientific explanation for all of these things, you would swear that the God was never necessary. And that's because of a single colloquial vernacular error in attribution. If you thank something that is not responsible for things in your life, that thing that is not responsible will become the answer for future generations. If you want to make a sandwich, and you know how to make one, ham, lettuce, tomatoes, onions, I don't know why you'd put onions on a sandwich, but anyway, pickles, tomatoes, etc. Those are ingredients. But if you tell the next generation, it's thanks to God that I have this sandwich, you're effectively telling them that to make a sandwich is to ask God for it. And you know, that seems silly and petty, but it's true. If you go around acting as though the mundane things in this world, as though every little thing in this universe happens because of your imaginary friend, the next generation is going to go around acting as though imaginary friends can solve their problems. As a very good example of this, Superman. You know, the Man of Steel. Big S guy. In one of his earliest comic strips, Superman was pictured in a World War II scenario. In a World War II scenario, Superman was ordered by the President of the United States to halt the terror that is Mussolini, Hitler, and Stalin. Well, here's the funny thing. In that comic strip, Superman flies around the world at the speed of light, flies to Germany, grabs Hitler by the scruff of his fucking coat, flies over to to Italy and picks up Mussolini by the scruff of his coat. Then Superman flies to, I think it's still Italy. But he picks up Stalin. And he brings all three of these motherfuckers to the World Court in roughly 5 panels of comics. That's less than a page of comic books and drawings and word bubbles. In less than this amount of time, in this comic strip, Superman was capable of ending the war. This really happened in the comic strip. And you know what else? A very real repercussion happened as well. Children who read this and really believed and loved in Superman in the 1960s, 70s, something like that, they read this comic strip and thought that Superman could win the war for him. Isn't that sad? Isn't it sad that these kids read this comic strip, and because they read this comic strip, they thought that Superman could win the war, fight real evil, and help them? What a desperate nation. But that's not the point. The point is that it's important to tell, or rather to teach generations the difference between real and fictional. If you keep teaching your children that God is going to solve all your problems, that Superman's going to fly around the world to win wars for you, and that you can just thank whoever you want for whatever great act of kindness, horror, or mercy, then you're subjecting yourself to having your history ruined, your logic ruined, and the entirety of your sense of reality ruined. Simply because you're choosing to believe in this fiction, to thank this fiction over the very real and hard work that people do in the real world. So I guess in closing up this video, I just want to say that everyone out there who has something that's good to them, or something that has helped them in their lives, take a little time out of your day to not just thank, but research that thing. Try to find out how that thing came to be. Find out who constructed it. If it's a method of help, find out who gave the instructions, etc. But the last thing you need to do, and probably the most detrimental thing you could do, the most horrible thing you could do, is just thank whoever. It's the most horrible thing you could do. I don't care if you're thanking God, if you're thanking Superman, if you're thanking your next door neighbor for things that they are not responsible for, you're a horrible person. And chances are, other people deserve to be free from your example. I think I've talked long enough. So without ado, I have to say, go out there and thank the people who are actually responsible for the things you have. My name is Donanonymous, and I'm signing out.